You know, I'm a bit puzzled why the federal government is now banning the Nazi salute. The South Australian government doing it too. The Victorian government's already done it. When Jews in Australia are facing so much hate, not so much from neo-Nazis at all. It's from the left and from some Muslims. I mean, neo-Nazis, of course, are an easy target. Who likes neo-Nazis? But, you know, they are very few around and, you know, strutting around in too tight black T-shirts, and they're a joke. And they're usually too brain dead to work as journalists and Greens politicians and actors and some Labor MPs and the sort of kind of people who are whipping up this insane anti-Israel hate. You know, the neo-Nazis aren't doing, these other people are. Today, for instance, a full-page ad by radical unions and others aimed at Israel, demanding it stop fighting back against those, well, they don't say, but I will, the terrorist regime in Gaza. So it was interesting then that independent federal MP Bob Katter, he posted a TikTok video that didn't take on neo-Nazis, but took on anti-Semitism from Muslims. Not all Muslims, of course, not at all. But he was pretty full on. Too much? Have a listen.
There are people in this country that are supporting this. They are a cancer on the soul of Australia, and they should be weeded out. And to think that that Parliament and that government has done absolutely nothing about them, and we're just going to check out just how much a certain group in Australia may or may not be associated with a mosque in Sydney, how much control it has over the Labor Party. The great silence whilst human beings are being persecuted. But don't come here to my country and disgrace us by your filthy, low anti-Semitism.
Should have mentioned he was standing with silhouettes of Jewish hostages still kept by the Hamas terrorist group in Gaza. Joining me is the panel, Michael Costa, former New South Wales Labor Treasurer, and Louise Elliott, business consultant and Hobart City Councillor. Michael, Katter's post there, your response?
I think it's unhinged, Andrew, and I think it's unhelpful as well. Look, you know my position. I'm a strong supporter of Israel. But the bottom line here is we've got a problem with people that are Australian citizens that are supporting, unfortunately, the slogans of Hamas, you know, and clearly that's a problem not going to be resolved by a rant by Bob Katter. It's got to be resolved by, firstly, what the government is doing, which I do support, banning symbols and, you know, flags and other paraphernalia from these terrorist organisations. In the case of the Nazis, that was the coalition that wanted to do that. And look, given the Jewish community supports that, I support that as well. Our problems are more fundamental than that. They need to get to basic education. What are we teaching these kids that are born in Australia that come up with these attitudes? What is our school system doing? What are our cultural institutions doing to ensure that they support our democratic values? I have no problem, as I said on many occasions, with people protesting. They can take a different view to me. What I have a real problem with is the hate speech, you know, the calls for anti-Semitism, the calls for genocide. That's what we need to be dealing with, and I don't think Bob Katter has added anything to that debate.
Louise Elliott, what do you make of it?
Well, I'm not as taken aback by Bob's TikTok. I can understand and appreciate his sentiment, to be honest, because we are in really troubling times and there's a lot of aggression out there. And I actually think there's a lot of people out there who are using symbols, whether it's the Palestinian flag or the from the river to the sea signs and things like that. There are some people who are using that to convey a message around peace and loss of human life, and that makes sense. But there are also a lot of it who, disturbingly, in Australia, are using that as a cover for their anti-Semitism. They do believe that Jewish people should not exist. And I've experienced something similar locally in the Hobart City Council, actually, where we had that signage and people that didn't agree with the messages around ceasefire and things like that. There was shame yelled out from the public gallery. And I think we really need to stamp out true aggression when we see it, because too often the government comes after easy targets, people like myself who speak the truth. And there's true aggression, there is true genocidal behaviour out there, and the government needs to stamp out that and actually prioritise it and be firm.
Meanwhile, Michael, Labor MPs and state Labor MPs from New South Wales, people from Sydney's West and others, went to Canberra to call on the Labor federal government to get tougher on Israel, demand no more fighting. They were there with their Palestinian kafirs to show what side they were on when they met Labor ministers in Canberra, a couple of backbenchers there too. Labor seems very divided on this war. It seems like there's an anti-Israel left against the rest. What do you make of all this?
Well, that's fundamentally true, Andrew. There is a large element within the Labor Party, particularly in the left, that is anti-Israel, and they've been anti-Israel before these events, so let's not forget that. And it's the same phenomena you saw in the British Labor Party under their previous leader. So there is a fundamental problem. I mean, these people are firstly foolish for their actions. This was nothing more than a stunt for their electorates, and remember, a lot of their electorates have very large Muslim communities in there. Rather than spending their time trying to educate these people and have a sensible position. I note that there was no call for release of the hostages, as there never is in these circumstances, or any explanation of why Israel shouldn't respond to a terrorist act, which we would respond to as a country, and most other countries would. So really, they've put their personal political self-interest, and that's probably being generous, ahead of principle. And unfortunately, you see this in the Labor left all the time.